Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Minecraft update video. Obviously this is Snapshot 23W06A, and I've labelled this as a 1.19.4 because those 1.20 experimental features, well, they just haven't been touched in this snapshot, but some other things have been. We got some very powerful new commands and features that have been added into the game. But first of all, let's get into the changes related to survival Minecraft. First of all, a jukebox, when you put in a record disc, it plays it. But now you'll see that there are note particles playing above it. This is a parity change to make it similar to Bedrock. This is kind of like how you see these particle effects above a note block. So Bedrock Edition already had this, and now Java has it too. Next up, we're going to go ahead into the creative inventory and search for paintings, and you'll see here that all the different types that you can place in this game are listed. Not only the name of the painting, but also the author is listed here too. Now this means in functional blocks you got a whole bunch of them filling up this space. They all have the same icon. And in operator utilities there are the 4 ones that you can't get in survival mode. So now when you click, you'll get the exact one that's specified from the one that you selected in the creative menu. One thing to note here, you do need the amount of space to place it. So if I try and put this one over the edge, for example, it can't actually place until we move it over by one. Also, in the Ingredients tab, Fire Charge has been added. And there is also a new game rule, which is do vines spread. To default, it will be set to true. And currently I had it set to false, so let's go ahead and enable that. And you can see the vines growing. That's because I sped up the random tick speed to 3000. And funny enough, it looks like Mojang actually missed a couple of vine types because the game rule is set to false at the moment, yet the never types can still grow. That'll probably be fixed in the next one, right? And next we have the Sculk sensor, which has had a lot of functionality added to it. So filling up a respawn anchor with glowstone will create a signal of 6. And also for 6, interacting with an item frame, putting an item in, popping it off or changing it will create a signal. You can trample farmland for 6. And remember, a regular jump is just 5. And I got a feeling a lot of these new detections are just 6 by default, so I'll let you know if something changes. Getting in and out of a boat is now detected too. And getting into the boat is actually a 7, and getting out is a 6. Dying a sheep will give you a signal strength of 7. Also, adding or removing a leash will now be detected for 8. Taking a book from a lectern will activate it. Harvesting a glowberry will set it off. And if you are unaware, you can right-click on vines to stop them from growing. This will now be detected by the sensor. And a turtle successfully laying a turtle egg will now be detected. And the same for frogs when they successfully lay frog spawn. Next up we have a new command which is known as damage, and as you might suspect it allows you to use the command to issue damage into the world. So as you'll see here, the command is damage, then you get to select an entity you want to target, specify the amount of damage, and then the damage type, which learn me to lead, there's one called bad respawn point. And you'll see other familiar things in here too, like fireworks, fireballs, even generic. And let's just say I decided to select Falling Anvil, I could then go on to specify at or by, but since Doc is not in this world, I have to settle for anviling myself, and if we look at the death message, it says Xisuma was squashed by a falling anvil. Perhaps this one would be a better example. Xisuma was pricked to death. Okay, let's try again. Xisuma was shot by Xisuma. So this command can be manipulated further by having at or by, so at a location or by another entity, and then also from another entity too. And if you want to get into the weeds of this, the website lays out the syntax for the command, as well as going over each of these parameters in detail. And there is a whole section here called damage types that can be extended through data packs. And so there is a whole bunch of documentation here on how to do that. If you're into any of this custom stuff, the article is linked down below. And there will be more technical stuff from the website real soon, but first of all, just want to take a moment to say if you're enjoying the video and you want to keep up to date with these snapshots, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you want to support it, and now let's crack on. So thanks for doing that. We're now going to create a new world, and that's because this screen has been updated. You'll notice here there is a button for experiments. This makes it so much easier to use than the data pack screen. One thing I'll point out though is you've turned these features on and then head over to the data pack screen, they'll also be selected here for you. Some keyboard navigation controls have been added as well, allowing you to cycle through the tabs at the top using Control and Tab or Control Shift and Tab to go in the opposite direction. Along with those accessibility changes, there are more. The damage tilt that was recently reintroduced can be manipulated here. This is the amount of shake caused by being hurt, and if you're unaware of how this works, the damage tilt is in a direction that is the opposite of the direction you've been attacked from. The keybinds screen has been updated for conflicts. If you have two mapped to the same key, you'll now get a mouse over telling you what the conflict is also with. Useful tweaks and changes, no doubt, but now we move on to some real technical stuff that has allowed me to put giant floating blocks into this world. So this is one of 3 new entities that can be summoned into the world. The first is item display, the second is block display, and the third is text display. So these are similar to markers, which were originally invisible armor stands placed into a world, a sort of access point that the player couldn't see. Now when I go and summon these in, you'll see we get the blue line like we do over here, but there's no other information to tell these things what to do yet. So they don't have hitboxes or collision boxes, they're sort of just entities in the world. So here's where things get a little complicated, because you can assign data to them and then make them visible in the world in a variety of different ways, like manipulating the size of the block to make it ginormous, or even rotating that block like this. There's a lot you can do, and we're going to run through a few examples here. So you can summon in text, an item, or a block, and then it will just sort of float there in a world without a hitbox or a collision box. So I can't punch this thing away. In fact, if you need to get rid of something like this, you'll need a kill command like the one on the screen. Now some of these properties are specific for the type, but it just so happens Enchanted can actually work on all 3 of them. But others are universal, like the rendering type known as billboards. So notice how when I look at this thing, right, like it's always just right there, facing directly towards me. And this can be manipulated in a variety of ways. This one right here is called horizontal, so it's slightly different to the one over there. It's really quirky. You can also manipulate the brightness as well. So this one is just in complete darkness, which lets you actually see the glint a little easier. And last of all, we have a view range, which means once we go back a certain distance away from where it is, it's no longer rendered. So if we pop over here to the website, you can see that for the item display, it lays out all the different things that you can do with it, and overall there's not actually a lot. But the common properties, these apply to everything. And the transform, which was the first one on that list, allows you to manipulate the size and scale and rotation of things. Then we have billboards, brightness, and view range, which I just demonstrated. And there's also shadow radius and shadow strength. And I believe this is related to the shadow that an entity or an item entity can create. You can manipulate the width and the height of what's being rendered, and also override if it's glowing or not. And the block display doesn't have a lot going for it other than block state. This, for example, is where you have a block but its state is manipulated, like the shape of it or if it's waterlogged. And here's an example of a block state that's actually been manipulated so it's also glowing. How cool is that? Now the third of these 3 is text, and this one actually has quite a few ways in which you can manipulate it. One of those is color, which isn't actually listed here, but you can change the opacity of the text, the background color, the default type of background it has. You can add shadow like we just saw, you can make it see-through, and you can control its alignment. All of this is documented in the article, and if you're new to this stuff, it's very difficult to get into because it's tricky to get all of the syntax correct to actually make this stuff happen. But if you do, you've now got an incredible amount of control over specialized entities that are just there for displaying text, items, and blocks inside of the world and letting you manipulate them how you like. The possibilities are endless, and I was actually going to render a giant player head up in the sky, but it turns out this stuff is yet to work with MPT data, so you couldn't pull a custom texture. And I'd like to shout out Missode for all of the help with the commands and the syntax and making it possible for me to actually show you how all of this works. So thank you so much, my dude. And on that note, we've covered pretty much everything in this snapshot. So if you're looking for more to watch, why not swing by my Linktree? It's linked down below. I've put lots of interesting content that I've made over the years into that website. There's links to my music, me playing guitar, and other cool stuff. So if you're looking for something to check out, it's linked down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.